Okay, so today the topic is the Hanami line, the public art selection process, and then an early look at the public art that's going to go in place. And this is a particularly, I really like today's talk because I like all these people, which is not unusual. I usually like the speakers, but I've been involved in the Hanami line since 2015, when it was a concept that Colleen Cadwallader brought to the Tree Foundation. She said, "Do you know this guy, Joe Rodoto?" I said, "No, who's he?" Well, this was his idea, and it only took a decade for this idea to come to fruition. So our first speaker is going to be Jessica Sanders, who's the executive director of the Tree Foundation. And when Ray Trethewey, who was the executive director in the early years, is in the audience. There's Ray, so don't say bad things about him. When he retired, we said, "Oh God, who can replace Ray Trethewey?" Well, Jessica Sanders is doing a great job. Everybody loves her, and she's been very, very effective. So she's gotten helped guide the Hanami line to this point, the point being that it's under construction, soon to open, and that the public art process has been completed. And Donald Gensler, who's with the City Arts and Culture Department, is in charge of the public art selection process for any public art in the city. In this case, he'll talk about the process you go through to do that, which is long and complicated and very rigorous. And out of that process came the selection for this art, which is the team of Reed Madden, Jennifer Madden and Jeff Reed, who have been working together for 25 years. Most of that time as a married couple. All of that time as a married couple, which I consider a minor miracle myself, but to each his own. So with that, let me turn the podium over to Jessica.
So I understand that you may have heard about this project before. Has anyone heard of Hanami before? Yes? Okay, good. That's wonderful news. So for those of you who aren't aware, you can go to our website for more. This is a project of the Sacramento Tree Foundation. I have a Ph.D. in urban and community forestry. I love trees, but people sometimes have blinders to what the general public loves and cares about for trees. And for this project, this is a once-in-a-lifetime project. We are creating a public space that's recognizing our Japanese American community while also honoring our future and allowing the science and art of trees to come together. It is very unique that you get to do that. This project was one of the things that really drew me to the Sacramento Tree Foundation. I'm originally from the East Coast. So I moved 3,000 miles without knowing a soul here, and this was one of the reasons why. This is a beautiful project. You'll see a rendering. Is anyone aware of where this is? No? Okay. Do you know the Museum of Science and Curiosity? Do you remember when you were driving on I-5 for what felt like 2 years, you just saw a big dirt mound? Yep, it's not there anymore. This is there. So I was there all morning, this morning, looking at the trees, going through everything, and there's 104 cherry trees there. So although that rendering is beautiful, I will tell you as someone who has been intimately involved with this for the past 3.5 years, I was moved to almost tears seeing it in person. The level of detail and beauty in it, down to the single blue brick paver of a Matsuyama-dori, of a walkway that is pointed to our sister city, Matsuyama, Japan, is inspirational. And I love trees. This park means so much more than just trees to a community. This park is in the River District, and it's an area that doesn't have a lot of public parks, and there's a lot of development happening there. So this park is an anchor for the community. One of the things that excites me about this park and about the art is that there are going to be 4 seasons of interest. I spent 10 years in Washington, D.C. The Cherry Blossom Festival is lovely, but you see it, and then it goes away, and people forget about it for a year. These trees that are planted there are pink flare. They turn a bright, vibrant red in the fall. The trees, rather than leaning down, lean up towards the sky. So even when they have no leaves, just the beauty and the architecture of this park is inspirational. And then we get to the art installation, which is moving. It inspires me to do my job better just by looking at art. And I think that's one thing that really excites me about this park. This park is over 10 years in creation. So, there were two people that were really inspirational in bringing the idea to Ray Trethewey, the previous executive director, and said, let's do this together. Let's create this beautiful cherry tree park and this experience of Hanami. So what Hanami really is the joy of being under the blossoms and beauty and recognizing that it's a passing moment, right? The blossoms don't stay on forever. And in Japan, a lot of people will picnic, and this park is created so you can picnic and you can enjoy it. And people sometimes clap when the wind blows through and you feel this beauty and awe around you. So although I'm sure people will take many pictures and will love it, it's really about being in the moment, right? And for me, that's what art is. I am not great at art. I don't know a lot about art, but I know how it can move people. And so this park really unites the trees and the science and the art with the community. So in 2017, the Tree Foundation Board of Directors voted and approved the capital campaign project. And it was started as a $3 million campaign. It didn't finish there. So it ended up being $6.95 million. We actually exceeded that in donations raised. We're at about $7.8 million. And what that extra money will allow us to do is programming in the park and ensuring that the park is long-lasting over time. So one of the reasons why this park was expensive is not only construction costs, but the park was raised. So this is Robert T. Matsui Park on the waterfront. It used to slope down to Jaboom Street. It does not anymore. It is raised up, and no matter where you are in the park, you can see the river. So once again, science, art, beauty, all of these things are uniting to create this gem, this beautiful space in our city. Jacobs was the architectural firm, and Jeff Townsend and Tamami are both in the audience if you have questions about that. One of the other reasons why it was a complicated project is it is on the levee. And if you know anything about levees, the Army Corps has very specific feelings and facts behind what you can and can't do. So when I started, we thought that we were going to have a permit in hand, and it was being routed for signature. We found out that we weren't in compliance with the Army Corps. And so this park is named after the late Robert T. Matsui Park. It is in Congresswoman Doris Matsui's congressional district. She is lobbying for more funds for levee and flood protection. And could we have made the ask of, let's get an exception, right? Yes, we could have tried. I'm going to tell you it wasn't in our best interest. Because 20 years from now, if something happens, and this park that we want to be the beauty and the gem and the space for respite, and a levee fails due to that, that's not something that I want on my conscience. So we ended up redesigning the park in January of 2021. I started December 9. It was really exciting. And what we did was we changed the layout, because although we could plant trees near the levee, we couldn't water trees. And in Sacramento, if trees don't have water, They don't live, right? So we talked as a group of, could we pay staff to go out there and leave the trees where they are and pay staff to go out and water, have volunteer groups? And we all just agreed that that wasn't realistic for any of us. That volunteers would probably get really excited about it to start and then say, this is hot. I don't want to do this, right? You're a volunteer. You're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself. So we ended up redesigning the park. So the programmatic space is closest to the river. And what that actually has created is a buffer. So you have a better experience in the park because the trees are between you and the highway. So as those trees continue to grow, you'll continue to experience a different place, right? So that's really what we thought about overall. So we actually got the final Army Corps permit in fall of 2021. We went public with the campaign of 6.95 in spring of 2022. Construction began in summer of 2023, and we are set to wrap construction probably in about 2 weeks. So May, June 2024, yes, thank you. And it will be open to the public in late June. So we have a capital campaign celebration that's happening June 20th for donors and partners of the group to celebrate what has been going on for a decade, right? So a lot of times people will see things and go, why doesn't this happen quicker? If you think about from the time we secured our permit to the time final construction, that happened pretty quick. The other thing to think about is that the Tree Foundation does not own this space. It is a city park. So we have the city, we have the Army Corps, we have our neighbors, the SMUD Museum of Science and Curiosity, or MOSAC, and all of that is coming together to ensure that this place is beloved, but all of those people have very specific opinions, right? And you need to consider them and listen to what could and couldn't happen. So this park is really combining the Sacramento region's love of trees and the rich cultural history of the Japanese American experience and the beauty of the Sacramento River. So it's really highlighting all of these lovely, lovely spaces together in one experience. You know, so we want to make sure that it's a permanent destination for not only residents, but that people can come and visit. It's going to be, and it is, inspirational. So it has drawn people. We've had public art competitions. I love public art and knew very little about the process, and Donald will explain all of that. I got to sit on the jury, and it was the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my life. Just to see how many people want to be a part of it, how many people love public art and have so many different interpretations of what that could be. So the sculpture was always part of this design. And when I started, there was an architectural rendering of what art would be in all of the renderings. And we would show the designs to people, and people go, oh, I love that sculpture. Do it exactly as is. And we would say, no. This is what an architect or a landscape architect thought the art could be, but we need to allow the process to happen. So I will say one of the things that could cause anxiety is, you know, what is it going to be? What is it going to look like? Seeing the wide talent of artists, the wide vision of artists. As soon as I saw one of the samples in the blinded jury process, I took a deep breath because all of it was beautiful. And I knew no matter what decision was made about the artist, we were going to have a beautiful, unique piece. And you know, I'm really grateful to the city, to Donald, and to Reed Madden for putting all of their love into this park, because I think so many of us did that as well. And so this is really a love language and a love letter to the city of Sacramento and to all of our residents and everyone who visits, that this is a beautiful place for people to treasure. I think I can hand it to you, Donald. Yeah? Nope.
Wait. So before we introduce Donald, what would people do if they want to help out and get involved?
Yeah, so there is still, so as part of the capital campaign process, we have grants, we have private donations, and there are still trees for sale. So if you would like to be a part of this process, there you can reach out to me and I can connect you to our development director, and you can purchase a tree. Your name goes on the donor wall, and you get to pick which tree you want. So it is very, very beautiful. And you would remain part of this project forever. I will also say, visit, if that is not an option for you, visit the park. Be inspired. Enjoy the beauty and the respite, and just sit. There are tons of benches, so we have both these cement twig benches, which are lovely, and we'll actually have, the Sacramento Tree Foundation is the only nonprofit in the world that does everything with trees, collecting little acorns, all the way to when a tree falls down, we mill it, kiln dry it, and make it available to the public. We're the only ones in the world that do that wide breadth. We have redwood from Sacramento as benches in the park. And so it really, this park is the Sacramento experience. It talks about, even if you go and you know nothing about it, just every aspect of it was so carefully thought out. Was detailed to how could we make trees and beauty and wood come together. So even if you don't think about the trees, they're there and they're enhancing your life and your experience. Is that good?
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. Very good. You can go now.
Thank you.
Right. And trees are available, but Jessica and I have trees beside each other, so we'll be together in perpetuity. We did that on purpose. Okay, let me turn it over to Donald Gensler to talk about the public art process.
All right, well, thank you, William. I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be able to share with you all a project that has become increasingly meaningful for me. Like William said, I run our Art in Public Places program. While I worked for the city now for about 7 years, I took over the Art in Public Places program in July of 2023, and pretty quickly, this was one of the first projects that landed on my docket that I needed to figure out how we would see it through. Just to back up really a little bit, I come to this as an artist who worked in kind of the public art realm for a little over 20 years around the country, and so I try to bring a sensitivity to that and to the artist's experience throughout the process. That said, and I was a little hesitant, I have to say. I kind of believe that our Art in Public Places program should be, and does, I think, highlight the wonderful work of these artists that get selected. And for me, that's kind of critical to what we do. I really want to be in the background, and I feel like if I'm doing my job right, we celebrate both the art and the artists that we advocate for every day. That said, William wanted me to talk a little bit about how the sausage is made, and so I'm happy to do that today. It may be a little dull. For me, it is energizing, but I also think that I want to make sure that we pay attention to the artists who have really, while I show up and kind of work through with my team, we work through each day some different aspects. It's the kind of the beauty and the poetics that come out of the artist's voice that I think is just really, really critical for you to hear. And this stuff isn't easy, okay? It's not easy to make it as a professional artist, and so I give a lot of credit to artists that work really hard every day to make that, to follow that calling. So I think that's an important preface. With that said, I've been honored to work with the Sacramento Tree Foundation, Jessica, of course, Jeff and Jennifer, but all the different folks that have been involved throughout the process. For me, that collaborative process is a bit of the spirit of what we try to do in our Art and Public Places office. Also want to mention my other team member is here, Amy Takahama Chapman. Amy, you raise your hand, and thanks for being here as well. And so it's really also quite vital and important that you understand that the city values art. And so that's what we're trying to make sure that it happens each and every day in the work that we're doing. Let me go ahead and advance. While I tell you a little bit about the process, I'm going to share with you some individual, sometimes artists and sometimes projects that I want to highlight that have happened in the last probably 5 years. So if you see here, you see Francesca Gamez and Sean Berner working on a project along North 12th Street. It was a really exciting project. And if you look to their right, you can see the squiggle grid that was used. And I'll show you a picture of what that mural became later. But they're part of the Trust Your Struggle collective. So I want to make sure to highlight those artists as we go through. Also, I'm going to talk about 3 distinct areas: the funding and beginnings, like how things started, but also what our goals are for the Art in Public Places program in the work that we do every day, and then also the artist selection process. And to be very transparent with you, William was one, he didn't say this and I kind of had to chuckle a little bit. William was one of our selection panel members, which he did mention, and one of the things he came to me afterwards and he said, "This is a lot of work." and it is, and we're rigorous about this stuff. We think that selection process needs to be equitable, needs to be fair, needs to be transparent, but it also needs to be objective, and it needs to happen in a way that we can kind of find what maybe that panel at that moment in time feels like might be the best artist to select for that particular job. And in fact, the artist that was selected for this job is Reed Madden, and you have a wonderful picture here of Jeffrey Reed showing us a little bit of their piece as they send me process photos, and I nudge them for process photos every once in a while, which is really important. So the funding and the beginnings. As many of you may know, the program itself started in 1977. And through an ordinance that was both a city and county ordinance, a dual agency. And in fact, what has happened is that, and at the time, they formed what was called the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission. And I'm fond of saying that, really the Arts Commission was formed for the Art in Public Places ordinance, but it's become much more. Currently, we're run by Jason Zhang, who's our creative and cultural manager. And we have a whole staff that runs a whole series of programs. Art in Public Places is one of them, but we also have a grants program, art education, film, the film office, the Sacramento Film Office is within the Office of Arts and Culture, and the umbrella of that whole thing is the creative economy. So we're also looking ways that we can engage artists and engage organizations that work within our larger creative economy, and hopefully share that and support that with all of you. Our Art in Public Places program, not only do we do projects like this with, I would consider kind of a new build project, a commission project, we also restore and maintain over 450 works of art. That's the city's collection. We separated from the county in 2019. We no longer are the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, lovingly known as SMAC in the past. We are now the Office of Arts and Culture. And so with that, the county has its collection, and we have our collection. The airport, by the way, is now controlled entirely by the county. But I just want to tell you that it's not an easy job maintaining this many works of art. And so sometimes we're failing, and we're trying to do as best we can to continue to keep that art going. But what's really critical is that we continue to engage with artists, and then we continue to bring art into not just one part of Sacramento, but throughout the city. Oh, I am so sorry. And I wanted to share with you quickly. This is a piece that is currently in North Natomas at the new Aquatic Center. It's an artist named Terrence Martin. It's called Between the Toes. And Terrence also went through a selection process, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and created this wonderful sculpture of these huge flip-flops that also kind of serve as a little bench area there at the new Aquatic Center in North Natomas. Terrence is also based in West Sacramento. So funding. So it looks like 1.2%. It's 2%. 2% for public art. That's the ordinance. That's where some of our funding comes from. But also our funding comes from grants, comes from city department collaborations, and earned income. So those are all different ways that we find funding opportunities for public art here in the city. Just to name, for example, in the last 5 years, we have grants from SMUD, from the state of California, from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Office of Urban Housing and Development. So we're not sitting around kind of waiting for the 2% for public art that are specifically for capital improvement program projects, that are projects that the city is doing that eligible projects allow 2% to go to public art. We are also actively looking for other funding that I think is really important and just really helps us be more vibrant as a group. Lastly, we work often with our community partners and try to find ways to work with them to assist them in their own public art projects. Not every piece of art you see in the urban space is the city, although, quite frankly, if there's ever a problem, I'm generally getting blamed for it. But that's okay. But there are a lot of things that happen through wonderful nonprofit organizations and others that are also see a value in public art. And we try to work with them in a whole myriad of ways. Here also another project from Trust Your Struggle. This project, just to point out, is in a new housing development called Marisol Village, and I'm super proud of being part of this project too. Actually was funded partially through HUD, which was a big step for them, but they saw art as an opportunity for community engagement. And so all of these hanging signs were designed by Trust Your Struggle along with and in collaboration with the community that now resides, many of the community members that now reside at Marisol Village. So, and I'll just say real quickly, that squiggle grid that you saw, that was the mural that they eventually created. So, notice, I was actually fortunate enough to be able to put them in touch with Miwok tribe, and so they spent, Sean and Frankie spent a lot of time talking with the Miwok about how do they make individual baskets. So they wanted to get that just right. So Creative Edge goals. These are the kind of goals in our program, and they're laid out in our cultural plan, which you can find online. It's called the Creative Edge. But just very quickly, Goal 5, celebrate and infuse Sacramento neighborhoods with art and culture. Just really an important goal that we're working through every day. Also, Goal 2, advancing equity for all Sacramento's diverse populations. That thread runs through, we try to make that run through everything we do, from both the selection process to the little bit of extra work that we try to do sometimes working with groups and working with areas that have been historically marginalized. We feel that's really important to spend some extra time and give some extra space so that they can appreciate and have that opportunity, those opportunities as well. And then lastly, art education. Goal 1 is about art education. We don't see it just for kids in the Art in Public Places program. We see art education and community engagement as kind of something that works together hand in hand. And I might say there is a workshop this weekend on the Del Rio Trail, which you should come out to if you're at all interested, right behind the Sprouts in Southland Park. It's called a Print-a-thon from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So, Now we're getting to the part here. Vicky Scurry's piece was also part of that North 12th Street. These are 2 sculptures that were installed as a kind of a gateway to Richards Boulevard, made with weathering steel and LED lighting. But everything starts with a request for qualifications. And so this RFQ goes out both nationally and internationally. And as William mentioned that he kind of learned, we're getting people from all over the place, people that are making public art their livelihood and that are really serious about this work and have a lot of training and experience, like Reed Madden. And so we had a pool of over 80 applicants for the Hanami Line project. It basically, that RFQ goes out for at least a month. In our case, it went out, I think it was out for about 2 months. And every project is assigned an artist budget, and the artist then applies ultimately with the understanding that they'll need to work within that particular budget. So we always want the process to be fair and equitable, and part of what we do in that is that we try to do information sessions, we try to talk with people, we try to help people through the application process, and make sure that that process can really allow them to present themselves in the best way possible. We also try to standardize that process. So there's always 10 slides, there's always an artist statement, there's always an artist resume. Those types of things, artists, if they're doing this all the time, if they're doing this for their livelihood, they need to apply to a number of different projects just to be able to make a living at this type of work. And we recognize that, and we want to really recognize so that we can get those artists to apply and present the best work possible. Lastly, we do recommend that artists apply for work, but recognize the odds are not good, right? There were 87 people that applied for this, and there was 1 commission opportunity, right? So this is tough. I tell artists all the time, like, you don't need to get angry about it, you just need to apply for more stuff, and keep doing the work. That's the key. Also, a wonderful little project here from Matthew Flores, who did a series of community tile pieces along the Del Rio Trail that was exhibited at Twisted Track Gallery back in July. Douglas Kornfeld did a piece at the Fire Station 14 in stainless steel, and that's a kind of a fun picture because I thought the firemen, and he spent some time going around with the firemen, and he enjoyed that process. So the selection panel, I see a couple panelists. I see Tamami in the audience there, and I know William's here somewhere, and there may be some other panelists as well. The selection panel is a bit of an art to put folks together, and we try to bring folks together that are both culturally diverse, but also professionally diverse, so that they truly have an opportunity to talk amongst themselves and work through the selection process. However, the first month is almost entirely just them scoring the work. They score it through a rubric that we provide to them, which has at a minimum 12, sometimes as many as 14 to 16 questions scored between 1 to 5, and then those scores are aggregated. So there's quite a process. We try to make it as objective as possible so that each artist is being reviewed and scored in the same way, and we oftentimes will have artists ask to share their scores afterwards, and we're happy to do that. Panel members are provided a small honorarium, and we do have an orientation session. But as William said, it can be exhausting. It's a lot of work, but I also hope that it's kind of intellectually stimulating for them as part of that process. I had mentioned the rubric. Those are the main areas: originality, technical skill, and public art experience, and there's a series of questions within that. The panelist meetings. There's a number of different ways that this can go. The panel could decide just to select the artist outright. In the case of Reed Madden, they selected 5 finalists, and those finalists presented their work in an interview process. They didn't do a design because they felt like you really wanted the artists to be able to talk with stakeholders. It was really critical for this that they had a chance to speak with a Japanese and Japanese American community that was so central to this project, and of course the Sacramento Tree Foundation, all the other stakeholders. So the idea was that the artists would do an interview and talk with the panel about how they would approach the project. Ultimately, Reed Madden was selected, and honestly, I could not be more excited and happy to be working with them. I lastly want to say, artists are always paid to do designs. And I think that's just really important. I want to share that with all of you, especially those of you who may hire artists at different times. There was a time when I was working 20 years ago on more rigorous public art projects when we were often asked to make small designs as just part of the competition process. And so we just, across the board, don't do that. We feel that artists should be valued for their work, just like architects and engineers and anybody else that's doing work out there. And so we always find a way to pay artists for their designs, and then sometimes that's part of the process. In this case, the artists were selected and then ultimately paid the full commission price. Michael Stutz here at Fire Station 15, Nighthawk Over the Waters. Michael is a California-based artist and did this wonderful piece based on the Nighthawk that came out of discussions he had with the firemen and with the local community. Just to leave you with a couple quotes. I made this one myself. So APP works with artists through the completion of their project. We support artists and work with them as a team to ensure a successful outcome for each and every project. Public art is a collaborative effort. I just think that that's really important for all of you to understand. You're interested in this. It is a collaborative effort. Artists recognize this collaborative effort. I'm part of that collaboration. The stakeholders are. The artists are really the central part that makes that happen, but we all have to work together. Just to give you an example, another project that's down by the river, if you want to see it, by Joshua Sofair, this project funded through the National Endowment for the Arts. River Crossing, I want to communicate with you. There were over 600 people that submitted stories and nominated people for this particular project, and ultimately 2 grandmothers were chosen, one for each public doc, and Etinesh Zaliki and Isabel S. Naranjo. So if you haven't seen it, please go down and see it. Part of the whole engagement process of Joshua's work. And lastly, to end and to segue into the Hanami line, one of the things that is a rigorous part of this process as well is the permit process. And there's engineering, and there's a lot that goes into it. And we as a city work with the artists to help them, but they're really making sure to figure all this out and get all those documents to us. So I thought I'd end with that. And I thought I'd also end with this quote by William Shakespeare, because it is truly so many different roles that all of us have to play in order for public art to succeed. So all of you know it, I'm sure, but all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Thanks very much. Appreciate being here.
Donald reminded me that we did do interviews with the 5 finalists, and Reed Madden did their interview in a car in the parking lot at the Norfolk Airport or some crazy thing.
Coming from another public art project.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for being here. As William said, we've been married and working together for 27 years, and we think that's about 150 years for an average marriage with the amount of time we've spent together. Luckily, we have very, very similar goals and taste in art. Jeff's got a 5-year degree in architecture. I have a master's in landscape architecture. So we come at public art from sort of serving public spaces, and we've gradually and it took many, many years. We've gradually become sculptors, and that's what we call ourselves now. But for a long time, we were just doing sort of when we had a little extra time and money to support ourselves, because it's very hard to make a living doing art. We would compete and do some public art. But now we are, for the last 5 years, full-time public artists, and it feels like a major shift. I now know what I'm going to be when I grow up. And this was we'll just start showing you some of our earlier work and our philosophy about art and how we got to this Hanami project. This was our first collaborative public art piece. This is, by the way, only public artwork that we're going to show you. And it's in Palo Alto on California Avenue. This used to be 2 parking spaces, and we were asked to propose something that included solar because it was being funded by the Palo Alto Utilities Department. And because we're trained as architects, we thought, well, here's an opportunity to make a space that people can come to time and again. And so these sunflowers, which is the California state flower, 7 of them spin with solar in the middle. And we built these benches to protect people from the ongoing traffic and made 7 tables that become an outdoor eating space. This piece wound up being recognized by the AIA, American Institute of Architects, as something they wanted to promote, to actually make outdoor parklets, that they're now called. And this happened in part because a friend of ours, an architect in San Francisco, lobbied to get parklets in the city of San Francisco by taking away a few parking spaces and making outdoor eateries. So anyway, this was our first sort of, whoops, won't go forward, there it goes. And we used recycled materials. We promoted LEDs, which at the time, over 20 years ago, were rare, and had a place for water overflow, et cetera. Anyway, this is in Tiburon. Have any of you seen this? This is downtown. This is probably our most famous work. It was very controversial going in. It's a very historic railroad town, and a lot of people were upset that there was this modern piece going in. And we got a lot of flack. Jeff and I design and build and install. We're contractors, and we do everything out of our shop, and this was no exception. We were on site, and we were the people, digging the concrete and putting in the fountains and doing everything. And so people would come by, and they wouldn't know that we were actually the designers and the artists. And so we'd hear, are my tax dollars going to this? And I'm like, no, this was a donation. And well, it's taking so long. We've been here 4 days. Yes. Anyway, it was quite the installation, but it really, people came around and people love it there now. And the water, the infinity edge, it's very hard not to have kids stick their hands in there. What I want to say about our philosophy is that we're trying to find a story, especially Jeff, he's really a fantastic poet in 3D, that what does this town need? What's the symbol of this town? Why do we want to place there? What do we want to put there? We don't just want to put a piece of art that sticks up and says, hey, look at me. We want something that people will return time and time again to see something slightly different. So we try to emphasize the natural environment and how will it change over time, over different light, night and day. And in this case, these 5 sails rotate very, very, very slowly, 180 degrees and then back again. And so they change what they are from sails to fins to a regatta to feathers to the gills of a shark. Tiburon means shark in Spanish, so that was another thing. But in almost all our work, we try to provide artistic benches. And in this case, there's a 20-foot boat bench that hopefully still looks great when no one's there. A lot of seating looks really empty, and you don't want to sit, in an empty auditorium. So we try to make seating that's part of the artwork that can seat a lot of people, but then also looks great if nobody's there. So, where am I going backwards? I think I'm going backwards. This is a piece we did just in 2019. This is the new ferry that went in Richmond, California, that heads to San Francisco. And so the story here was what does Richmond have that could be there by the water that would bring people pride? And Richmond is sort of thought of as the armpit of the Bay Area because it's very industrial. And we're right next to the there's the Chevron refinery, but we're right next to the National Museum for World War II. And so there's already a lot about how Richmond produced something like 600 victory ships, etc. So here we decided that the eelgrass, which is so important to the health of the San Francisco Bay because invertebrae use the eelgrass, and then the fish eat the invertebrate, and then the birds come. And so Richmond has 75% of the eelgrass in the bay. It's the heart of the ecosystem, or the marine system. And here are 7 giant abstracted eelgrass with 3 oyster benches, because it was also an area that had a lot of oysters long ago. And then we planted this grass that looks a little like it could have been underwater, and the concrete is also to look like mud flats. And under the bench and on the left is our programmer, because there are 20,000 LED lights on the back, and there are solar panels on the front. And this was the opening night with all the LEDs programmed. Let's see. So there's the ferry in the back. And we had local dancers come and choreograph different dances. This is a piece in Maitland, Florida, north of Orlando, and it was known for its orange orchards for over 100 years. And so we're in a park trying to recreate a giant blossom that we're, again, hoping people will come to and sit in and enjoy. So here it is being under construction, and on the ground are 10 different facts about oranges, like they live 100 years, Christopher Columbus brought them to America, etc. So that's us just having installed it. And the center of the blossom, the stigma, turns like a disco ball, and it catches the light and throws little dots up on the roof. And here it is at night, again, spinning with lights. So the idea here is to make a community space that grabs people, not just once, but many times, to come and as a place to meet. And we're hoping that that will be true with Hanami too, that people will come and see something different every time they come, and it will be a place to meet. This is a piece in Des Moines, Iowa. Iowa has the second most wind production in the country, and so these bend in the wind, and they make this is called prairie song, like prairie grasses, and they make a little hush sound when the wind hits them. There's little rattles in their upper area. This is not on our website because it's a little on the cutesy trite side, and we're not usually cutesy and trite, but this just shows you some of the construction that we get ourselves into. This bench, which was a mitt, this is called Play Ball. It's right outside a new stadium, and this mitt would have been way too heavy to travel to South Dakota, where it's located. And so there's Jeff down at the bottom right. The crane was maxed out, and we weren't quite able to flip it without extra bodies to move it in place. And here it is at night. It's a bouncing ball with the lights that go down and up into it. Anyway, well, this is a piece in Southern California in Aliso Viejo. These are giant Matilla poppies, and again, there's benches around them. And at night, they spin in the wind and change color and pulse. This is in the Everglades Park in southern Florida, and there's a lot of alligator shows down there, and we thought this is one of the most incredible bird sanctuaries in the world. There's over 360 species of birds that use the Everglades, and so we thought our mission should be to really get kids and adults to really think about the amazing birds that are there. This is called Flight Path, and we chose the 20 most seen birds in the area and wrote about them. And then there's a pathway with the 20 birds that's like a little game. You have to figure out which bird you're stepping on based on what you know and what you've seen in their life-size silhouettes. Here we are drawing them. And there they are cut out before they've gone in the concrete. And this is the actual great heron. In Jeff's hands, he's trying to create this amazing beak, which is no small feat to make out of pipe. We're not casting anything. Everything we start with is either flat sheet or pipes. And so it takes a lot of cutting and grinding and maneuvering and bending. And here is the bird at the top. This was going to be a really simple project, and we were just going to have a layer of wings, and we realized, no, while we're making it, no, it'd be far more beautiful if we had individual feathers. There's 6,000 feathers in this piece. It took us many more months than we thought we would. It's a little happened here in Hanami too. Anyway, and again, there's benches. They don't say I'm a bench, but there's places to sit, and the bird is facing, so there's shade on one bench at least most of the day. This is a piece in Laguna Hills, Southern California. Again, to make there is no town center. There's no grass other than the grass that's here. This is the 2 acres that the city said, oh, we want this to be our city central. It's right in a mall. So we tried to create a shade structure that was a seating structure that's also a stage on the left, and then there's a 40-foot bench. And there used to be a sycamore grove there, so it's inspired by the sycamore trees and lit up at night. And hopefully the town will program events there as well. This is in the San Francisco Botanical Garden. We were asked to do something for the Australian section, and we tried to create the colors of the soil in Australia and make an outdoor classroom in the center. This is in the Berkeley Marina. Again, an outdoor classroom was the idea, but also to be really low impact visually, not to say, oh, I'm art, but to provide a place for people to go and seating and low retaining walls. If you look down in the bottom left there, you can see the more of the walls. And this project was to protect the burrowing owls. There's 1 or 2 every year, and they need to be no dogs and people around this area. So there's 700 feet of either fencing that we made look like grass or these walls. These are some of the fence posts that we created for that project, and again, an educational plaque about the burrowing owls. This is a piece we did last year in Louisiana. It's for a special high school that's within the university, the Northwestern State University. 300 students dorm here, and they get to take classes in the university as well as their own place. And this, we were asked, part of the RFQ was to create something that was in honor of Carolyn Dorman, who was this remarkable woman who was not only a naturalist, but an anthropologist and an artist and a writer. And she's the reason there's the Kisatchie National Forest in Louisiana, with over how many acres? Anyway, she's an amazing woman. 1,000 square miles. So again, we wanted to create a place for people to come. So there's a lot of boulders there. So there's seating, but it doesn't scream seating. And at night, from the center of these trees, she was trying to protect the longleaf pine. So that was the inspiration here to create a kind of a mini forest of longleaf pine, that within the pine is her spirit and a story of her life and all of her accomplishments. And at night it's lit up, and there's another 6,000 needles in these trees. We get a little nuts after we win a project, and we're like, oh, that's a good place to start, and then we keep going. Anyway, that's her inside the tree, lit up. And now I'm going to let you on. I'll start, and he's going to jump in. This is the very first sketch that, as we're heading to the airport, and we know we're going to be interviewed as soon as we get off the plane, I'm saying, Jeff, I need you to draw us this concept right now. And he had like 10 minutes before we got towards the airport. And this was his adorable little sketch that may or may not have tipped the scales in our I don't know. But anyway, I'm glad he did it. And he really had the inspiration for this piece. You want to talk about your inspiration?
Well, first of all, I have to, looking back over this work, I have to thank my partner for the last 25 years, which she says she measures in dog years. Project after project, she kind of slipped in the idea there are thousands of parts in this, and that they didn't start out that way. Something happens to my brain in the middle of these things where you feel this sense of honor to have a space that's public space given to you, and you feel a sense of responsibility and stewardship that at least I take that very seriously, and fall in love with the idea after it's been initially proposed, and it's simple in the proposal, but then you start detailing it and more concepts flow in and flood you. And you want to keep.
You know how to get it better, make it better. You can make it better.
Yeah. So then it's a negotiation between us as to how much we can do, and so that last project, that last image, grew out of this idea of taking the Zen cone of, yes, you can see the blossoms in the tree, but do you see the tree in the blossom? And this project, more than any other, pulls on something that we have cultured and nurtured, or has been nurtured in us with our special attention to historic Japanese culture and art traditions. We've studied over our lifetime together. In all our trips to cities, we always go to museums and exhibits that we can. And there's the idea of Hanami in and of itself, if it brings a kind of meditative, contemplative awareness that most traditions don't. Hanami means flower viewing or flower watching. And this idea of that it's a national pastime to actually sit and watch flowers for possibly days is just is a remarkable, way of thinking. And so how could we honor that depth of thought and a gift that we had been given for our whole training, our whole study? And one of the best iconic artists of the Japanese tradition is Akira Kurosawa, and his film Dreams, if you haven't seen it. In one of the episodes, there I believe are 6 episodes, one of them is called The Peach Tree Orchard. In that, there's a special moment when the traditional Japanese theater no dancers do a performance, and at this crescendo, all these delicate petals start falling across the screen. And that is a moment we call the Kurosawa moment that has inspired us for 25 years. And in fact, in our poppies that we did in Palo Alto, that first image, we filled the flowers with bridal veils. We covered them with bridal veils and filled them with dried petals, and then pulled them as the piece opened. So that was our reference to Kurosawa then. So now, looking back over 25 years of work that we've done, this is an incredible moment for us to try to achieve some kind of form for that. And you think of this amazing quality that cherry trees have over the years. And over those 3 weeks, let's say, where they're rising in this nubile, innocence. And how do you allude to that for the other 48 weeks of the year? How can you remind people of that? How can you stand as a placeholder for that day that they come back? So one of the things we first targeted was this idea of mobiles of glass that could move and allow different layers of transparency. And so this sculpture becomes a armature for 400 pieces of hand-blown glass that are allowed to move within a range of motion, and then, so that it catches people off guard, the entire flower itself, flower head, can rotate with wind. So people will look up and say, is it moving? I think it's moving. No, it's not moving. Sure it is. Okay. So that's some of the things we're going after.
I just want to add, so we spent a lot of time listening to the stories of the Japanese and descendants of those who were brought here and lost everything in World War II, and that this park is in honor of Robert T. Matsui, who is the only congressman to get reparation for people who were stolen from. And it is quite a responsibility to think about creating a piece of sculpture that honors the Japanese and we're not Japanese, but we are trying to be aware of what not only what was lost, but what is to come in the springtime and rejuvenation of this park and this place.
So thank you for bringing that, reminding me of that completely other aspect of this project. So there was the overarching history and traditions and what has informed us, but the place itself, we feel, we listened and feel, would hope we can tell the story and honor and allude to the Japanese American tradition that has survived and been reborn, rekindled after internment and after loss of community centers to redevelopment and then to the highway that came through and pushed them out. 3 times they've lost their community and have been now perhaps given this place that is close to that honors their original community center. So one of the techniques or forms of art within the Japanese tradition is called kintsugi, which is simply said, broken pottery that is mended with gold. You might know that tradition. It speaks to the idea of the vulnerability and fragility of the human or the material condition, and then seeing how adversity actually can, and the repair, the healing of adversity can make the object more beautiful. In our study of cherry bark, we just, as artists, we're just so impressed with the quality of the cherry skin. This is a close-up that shows these kind of abnormalities and textures within a very smooth surface. So we took the idea of bands that we patinaed, we polished and patinaed. We polished them in a way that we could kind of evoke the incredible smooth jewelry-like quality of the cherry bark, and then have these nodes in between. And then as the story of kintsugi, as the cherry tree moves upward, it grows into a place where it faces adversity, and we express that through the broken skin that you just saw, and then the bark, the nubs or nodes can move into not only being a pattern in the bark, but they actually become sutures and maybe a way of healing the tear of kintsugi, the tear of the tree, and how it was disturbed and broken. And that area is, in the end, is raccoed with patina. It is dark. It's a kind of a charred dark. And growing out of that, Jen.
I'm trying to get a picture of the bark. Oh, well, we don't have it.
Okay, so there is the raku
Here's
kind
the
of
record.
texture.
There's our helper.
Yeah.
He's giving us, those are, the piece of pink paper is to represent the 400 hand-blown glass pieces.
That we're hanging on the sculpture in Amaka. But growing out of the tear that you see there is a very polished stainless steel above that represents the new growth. So we're suggesting the new growth and the resilience of this community in the face of adversity. That's the best way we can speak to in sculptural form. That's what we found was best. And as we move upward, then the sculpture, the overall canopy becomes something that's very jewelry-like, very almost precious with its unfoldment. And this glass, we searched for many months to find a glass that we thought was appropriate, and right, and partly because there was a delay in the schedule, we were able to take advantage of, okay, because there was a delay in the schedule, we were able to. Okay. We were able to take advantage of this hand-blown glass that was blown just for this project.
In Seattle.
That we think evokes the flutter and the capture of thousands of
Cherry blossoms.
Of cherry blossoms.
And these will rotate slightly and cast shadows. You can see the shadows on the ground. What's wonderful is we won't see any of this until it's installed, when you all see it. We've just seen parts, of which there are over 3,000 parts to this sculpture. So we're looking forward to seeing that reflection on the ground as much as anyone. This is part of the 3,000 parts. So each of those pieces of glass needs a holder, and each of those holders needs to connect, and then they need something that will connect and rotate, and then this is at a much bigger shop than we have that's in Stockton, where we found this dog. This is Vern. He's helping us roll all the different layers that go in the canopy. Originally, they were just all going to be the same size, and for many reasons, that was not feasible and not as beautiful as what we now have created, which has 6 different sized branching and a bearing, so that again, this will just very, very slightly rotate. Hopefully there's no 150-mile-an-hour winds. It won't turn into something going spinning fast, but.
I have to say, this is sculpture on this scale. There's a 14-foot round canopy and the height of it and all. It is not for the faint of heart. You can't do something like this really without the capabilities we have in computers now. We work very closely. We have a 25-year relationship with a computer programmer and master builder who helps us give form to ideas. And then the CNC process, that picture you saw a moment back with the parts in a box in a form, the plywood just that holds those parts, that all has to be mapped in the computer. And then all the parts, it took literally a week for our CNC miller to figure out how he would land these Y joints to the hub that they got welded to. And then that all has to get special inspected welded by me and have continuous observation. These are all the kind of things that go on in this that you don't think about when you just walk out under this tree.
Or when we're applying for art.
Okay, you got me on that one.
So is that the last slide? I think that's the last slide. So this is yesterday's photo. So we still have a ways to go, but we will get there. And we can't wait to celebrate with everyone. Thank you.
So we've run a little bit over, as we usually do when we have multiple speakers. It's just kind of the way it goes. But let's ask 2 or 3 questions from the audience. Scott Heckes, there you are. When you ask a question, can you speak into the mic, because we're recording this?
I do have a question because, can you hear me? Okay. We are the city of trees, and it's a climate question that I didn't even think of, and you brought it up. We have had, in the last 2 years, horrible things happen to our trees. And as you finish your sculpture that's absolutely gorgeous, I do hope you will take into account that we have had some horrible, horrible winds here lately.
We know how devastating those winds were. And we have spent more on engineering this piece than on any other piece we've ever done because it has to meet 150 mile an hour winds. So 151, we'll see what happens, but 150, it'll be fine.
Other questions?
Other questions?
We've got right here. Yep.
I'm just delighted that you're going to celebrate the winds of Sacramento because the Delta breezes are our best friends in the evening, and I've always wanted to do that. I worked with the state of California for the sustainability projects, and they had an opportunity. There's these wind readers, and I thought, oh, if the lights could just read the winds coming, and so I'm excited you're going to have that celebration.
Questions? So, remind us, Jennifer, when's the opening?
Jennifer or Jessica?
Jessica.
Okay, Jessica, I'm sorry.
Too many
I'm
J's.
the family of all J's, so I
Right.
answered everything, but I wanted to be.
Now you know how,
So
yes.
we have a capital campaign celebration that is private. We have a capital campaign celebration that is private June 20th. The park will actually be open the week before, although we aren't publicizing that widely because we want everything to be pristine for the celebration, which is in the park. It's an evening event. And then it will be open for everyone to just go and experience. There'll probably be a ribbon cutting with the city to talk about it, but the art is going in pretty soon. And we're just excited for everyone to be able to experience it. I know, sorry. No pressure.
Right. Pretty soon she looks at you staringly. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. All right.